Hello there, good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's reading from Maurice Nicoll's psychological commentaries on the concept of effort. A commentary on effort, a very important subject in the Gurdjieff work, The Fourth Way. In Ouspensky's text, he talks about super efforts and how super efforts are all that are counted in the work, and I'm sure Maurice Nicoll will touch on something similar and again give some wonderful and in-depth commentary about our efforts, how they affect our internal state and our level of being. And I'm very much looking forward to share this with you. So as always, I will answer any questions and comments at the end, although if you come in and say hello, as always, I will say hi, so be sure to say hello in the comments. But for now, let's begin. It's a rather long series. I think there's several parts, and yeah, I'm looking forward to read this together. So, Birdlip, December the 19th, 1941. Commentary on Effort, Part 1. When a person in this work has ceased to make any efforts, he is often said to be drifting. To drift means to have no direction. In other cases, he is said to have fallen asleep. To fall asleep in the work means simply to forget all about it. For example, a person may become so immersed in life that he forgets everything relating to the work. He is then not merely drifting, but fast asleep. In this conversation, I'm going to speak about effort. The work depends on effort. It is based on effort, but effort of a certain kind. First of all, effort is, in general, distinguished into two kinds, mechanical and conscious. In a general sense, mechanical effort is what we have to do, what life makes us do. All animals, all nature, all organic life, of which we form a small part, have to make mechanical effort. Let us take an example. If it is raining, you must put up your umbrella. This is exactly what it means by mechanical effort, and by such efforts we adapt to life. Conscious effort means effort that is not necessary in life and is not occasioned by life. That is, life is not the cause of it. The source of its origin does not lie in life. This means that some source other than the interests of life is necessary in order to make conscious effort, through which conscious effort becomes possible. Have you ever asked yourself if you really believe that there are any influences not belonging to life and coming from another source? Let me remind you of what this teaching says. There are two kinds of influences in life itself called A and B influences. A influences are created within life by its clash and friction, by its jealousies and hatreds, by its ambitions, its wars, its crimes, its commerce, its interests, its laws, and so on. But B influences exist in life and they speak another language because they originate from a source outside life, from what are called C influences. That is, from people who have undergone individual evolution. C influences do not come from the circle of mechanical humanity, but from the conscious circle of humanity. But it is impossible for C influences to reach life directly. They would not be understood. Theirs is another language, one which we must learn slowly. Life alters them into B influences, but the point is that this system is based entirely on the existence of these other influences, distinct from life, called B and C influences, actually on C influences. That is why when we have to learn a new language, you must understand that if a man had not an inner secret destiny, if man were not a seed and often a very unhappy one, there would be nothing for him save life and its interests. But the inner destiny of man does not lie in life. This seed, that is man, is capable of its own evolution, and only certain kinds of light and heat can develop it. Not the light and heat of the sun, which governs external life and is the source of it. I say all this here because unless the two destinies of man are formulated in your own minds, it is difficult to understand what the work is about. The work is called the fourth way, as distinct from the three other ways. It is in life, and so a person must know how to be in life and how to use life and get what he wants from life, and at the same time be in the work. This is only possible for certain kinds of people, namely good householders, who are those who do their duty in life but do not believe in life. And you must realize that in this work it is not demanded of you that you give up life or anything of that kind. On the contrary, this work makes you realize that you must use life as far as you can for experience, but you must not trust life and get lost in it and think that the goal lies in life experiences. Conscious efforts are efforts to awaken from the sleep induced by life in humanity. As you know, it is not in the interests of nature that man should awaken, for then he ceases to serve nature. Such efforts would be impossible if man were merely a product of nature whose sole function was to adapt to life. Why I say this at this point is that if you do not see for yourselves and are certain that there are in life two quite different sorts of influences, two kinds of things, two kinds of literature, two kinds of historical figures, then it will be impossible to make conscious efforts beyond a very limited degree. This is because in making the effort of personal work, the emotional centre must open out and must take its right part. And if it is only turned to life and personal ambitions, etc., it cannot come into its right action. In making effort, it is necessary to consider from what part of oneself the effort springs. A person may make effort against negative emotion in public, for example, for fear of making a fool of himself before others or of losing his job, etc. This is mechanical effort. As soon as he is at home, he will express his negative emotions. Conscious effort is quite different and springs from a different part. When a man feels the existence of A and B influences and realizes that C influences must exist outside life to account for the presence of B influences within life, he begins to feel the existence of something higher than himself. This begins to awaken the emotional center and to make conscious effort possible. Otherwise, the man will only feel self-emotions and remain in the narrow sphere of himself. The most important conscious effort is to remember oneself. This always is difficult because we forgot ourselves long ago, but it is quite impossible if a man has no sense of higher influences and cannot see the difference between A and B influences in life. Self-remembering must have an emotional factor, not of self, not of personality, but of something deeper, or, if you prefer it, higher than one's ordinary self. The factor of will enters in self-remembering, not self-will, but conscious will. There are two sides of the work where effort can be made, and these are the only two sides on which a man can evolve. The first is on the side of knowledge, and in the case of this work, the effort lies in thinking about the ideas and forming one's own individual intimate and inner connection with their meaning, and nothing is more important to start with. A man must think, speculate and ponder, take into his mind, dwell on in his own way, imagine and form his fantasies, his own sense of the work, as a genuine starting point in himself. For once he forms some starting point, if it is wrong, it can be modified. The work then begins to shed light in the mind. The second is on the side of one's being. Efforts on the side of knowledge are different from efforts on the side of being. It is quite easy to find this out for oneself. Man can develop in two directions and only two, on the side of knowledge and the side of being. Only these must go hand in hand. The resultant is understanding. As was said earlier, this work must be based on understanding. One cannot adapt to it as one does to life outside oneself. Understanding is the most powerful force we can create in ourselves. Nothing better can be sought for in the long run than understanding. And in the work, a man is defined as his understanding. A man is his understanding. Today I wish to speak only of effort on the side of being. Efforts directed upon one's being are different, as was said, from efforts directed to thinking about the knowledge of this system. The two sides of man, the side of his knowledge and the side of his being, must be united to form understanding. This work gives us more knowledge than we have being for, but it is very difficult to unite this knowledge with being. The whole task, however, is to do so, and the first necessity is to value the knowledge, that is, to like it, to wish it, to feel a desire for it. Knowledge can only unite with being through some emotion, through some desire, through willingness. One must will what one knows. Otherwise, knowledge cannot unite with being. You cannot work on your being apart from the knowledge of this system, and you cannot have any practical knowledge of this system unless you apply it to your being, and you cannot apply it to your being, that is, it cannot enter your will and so act on you if you do not wish it, desire it. A man's ordinary state is that he does not will what he knows. We act from our state of being, not from our knowledge. It is our will that acts, and our will arises from our level of being. So a man knows better, but acts worse, and as long as he is in that state, he has no unity in himself, and so no understanding, because there are two separate sides in him. For knowledge to act on being, there must be desire or delight or pleasure in the ideas of the work, for nothing can pass from the side of knowledge to the side of being without desire or pleasure or longing, that is, without willingness. Then a man will wish to live with what he knows, to live his knowledge, and his will and his knowledge will begin to coalesce. It is here that the whole valuation of the work and its inner background comes in. Everything in the work starts from valuation, and this means wanting something, for you do not value a thing if you do not want it. This brings in the will, and it is through the will, through willingness, that you begin to apply the knowledge to your being. If you do apply it, then your knowledge will begin to turn into understanding through a union between the will of your being and knowledge in your mind. As you know, understanding is defined clearly in this system. Understanding is the arithmetical mean between your knowledge and your being. So you see that to have knowledge of these ideas is not enough. It is quite easy to see when a person only has knowledge but not understanding of this work. If you understand something, you can speak of it in different ways. If it is merely knowledge, you will speak of it from memory. Now, as regards efforts on being, everyone must make conscious effort on his being every day, and especially at this period of time when everyone is going to sleep. If you wish to take life as your teacher, then, as was said in a previous paper, you must practice non-identifying with what life brings you, pleasant or unpleasant, for a certain time every day. Life demands mechanical effort, but if you practice non-identifying, it becomes conscious effort. Only do it for a certain time, say an hour, and keep conscious and observe yourself carefully. For instance, make your aim not to object to anything for an hour. This helps you to see what non-identifying means. Afterwards, you can relax as regards work and do what you want if you like, but either work or don't work, and know what you are doing. Do not be in between centers, do not drift for lack of any mental direction, and do not at this time fall asleep. To relax is not necessarily to fall asleep. Now, as regards working on special things in yourself and making effort in regard to them, that is, on the side of your being, on the kind of person you are and the way you react, first take your negative self, that is, your daily negative emotions. Try to see first of all that you are negative and acknowledge it. This helps by itself. Now, as you know, it takes another person to make you negative, so ask yourself some questions such as these. 1. Do I think I am badly treated by someone? 2. Am I jealous of someone? Or 3. Is it mechanical disliking? This helps you to formulate your situation to yourself. Now try to formulate the answers to yourself. Then try to think what external considering means. External considering means putting yourself in another person's position and realizing his or her difficulties. It is one way of transforming life. So now become the person you think has treated you badly, or the person you are jealous of, etc. Try to do this sincerely. It requires conscious effort. Visualize yourself as the person and reverse the position. That is, you become the person you dislike or hate or criticize, and you are now looking at another person called yourself. As a rule, this will cure you very quickly if you can do it. But if you are in an evil state of negative emotion, as we all are at times, nothing will help you save realizing what you yourself are like, that is, what evil you have in you and what you are really like. This is painful, but we cannot change without pain. The work is a mirror, and everyone in it can help you to see your own self in that mirror. But you will not understand this unless you see yourself in others or others in yourself. External considering is the main way to deal with negative emotions, but it is necessary to understand what it means. It depends on visualization. External considering takes some time. It is difficult to do sincerely, that is, lightly. It requires always a very great effort to do it, but it acts on being directly. Some find it impossible because they cannot imagine they might be someone else, especially a person they despise. This makes the work difficult for them after a time. Now let us speak of efforts on depression. Depression is not the same as being negative. There is one interesting thing about depression to be noticed, namely that it affects all centers, even the instinctive center. Depression is not due only to loss of hope and belief in the future, although this is a common cause. It can arise simply from making no efforts of any kind, so that the centers are waterlogged, so to speak, and on the other hand, the state itself, however caused, is one in which the energy in centers turns sour. It can arise simply from a picture of oneself, as when one imagines one is always, let us say, successful, and finds one is not. But whatever its cause, the state of depression must be recognized and every kind of effort made to overcome it. I say effort because effort only will change the state, even the effort of doing just ordinary small necessary things. But it is the conscious effort of remembering yourself that will instantly lift you out of depression. The reason is that it brings you into work eyes, that is, into the eyes that feel the influences of the work, and out of life eyes in which the depression is centered. And here I must add that you must fight to have the work in you. You must fight in your mind for the work, to keep it alive, otherwise it begins to get cold. Now take the question of conscious effort on mechanicalness. This is a very big question. Begin with talking, outer and inner. Talking is the most mechanical thing in a person. Remember, it does not only mean talking at the time, but talking afterwards. I must warn you that it is always easy to see when a person has been talking badly. And talking is not merely saying things, but writing them or showing them in some way by intonation, by gesture, by hinting, and so on. Hinting is a very bad example of wrong talking. Finally, it means talking inside oneself. Try to think over what you have said during the day and then think of the rules. People often infect one another by bad talking, that is, they are dangerous to one another. And remember here that what I say to anyone in private is not to be talked about. That is a definite rule. Now take another mechanical habit apart from talking. First, you must observe whether it is a bad habit, i.e., if it puts you asleep. There are good habits which are mechanical, but why try to alter them? Distinguish between good and bad mechanical habits. Notice a clear example, i.e., laziness, greediness, etc. Try to overcome it for a short time, that is, while you have the force to do so. Never work on yourself beyond the point that it is useful, for then effort ceases to be conscious and becomes in turn mechanical. Everything becomes mechanical in time. Remember that. Everything you do consciously is preserved for you. Everything you do mechanically, since you did not do it, is lost. So efforts must be conscious. Actually, there are no such things as mechanical efforts in the work. They belong to life. There is a class of efforts called in the work. There is a class of efforts called in the work efforts to avoid. This means that people make all sorts of useless and unnecessary efforts and avoid making the effort that is required. You remember the clown at the circus? He rushes about doing all sorts of useless things. This clown is ourselves, but we will speak of useless efforts next time. Commentary on Effort, Part 2. All through this work, on every side of it, the effort of remembering must be made. Memory lies in all three centers. Let us suppose Oh, hello there, Jordan. I'm glad you're enjoying the reading, and everyone else, do feel free to say hi. All through this work, on every side of it, the effort of remembering must be made. Memory lies in all three centers. Let us suppose a man reaches a state in the work in which he feels the necessity of making an aim based on what he has observed in himself. He makes an aim and then decides to keep it. But in order to keep it, he must remember. He must not merely remember what his aim is, but he must remember why he made it and what led him to decide to keep it. If he merely remembers his aim as words, as a sentence, namely that his aim is not to do this or that, not to react in this or that way, for our aims should at first be not to do, it is not enough. He is only remembering in a very small part of the intellectual center. To remember in a real way, he must go back and recreate the situation where he made his aim and think of its meaning and re-feel the circumstances when he decided to keep it, etc. Full memory is a question of all three centers working together, and an aim includes all three. For if a man is going to work against something in himself, the thing, whatever it is, will be represented in the intellectual center and in the emotional center and in the moving center, and keeping the aim will involve all three, and remembering it will also involve all three centers. And hello, Flibbity Gibbets, and welcome. It's nice to see you, my friend. I hope you're well. In making effort on some side of oneself, such as some particular form of being negative, remember that everything goes in cycles in oneself. That is, everything comes round at certain intervals. It is not that these intervals are regular, but that things recur or return internally, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. The point is that by observation a person may notice and remember that this is so, and in this way he may gain some foresight and give himself a shock before some mood, some state in himself has properly begun. This belongs to the idea of making effort at the right time. Once a characteristic state or mood, etc., has gained enough strength, it is difficult or impossible to stop it, i.e., it is too late. But if self-observation has developed that special memory of oneself that results from it, and can only result from it, then if this new memory is strong enough, it will give you a point of vantage from where you can make effort upon some useless state when it is beginning to return. That is, you recognize it. If you really have begun to dislike it, then you will have an emotion to help your memory and thought. This will help, and it will also help you to observe more, namely, that the state starts up earlier than you thought, in little trifling things that you had not connected with it before, such as beginning to use certain phrases, or in a slight change of feeling to others, and so on. Fuller observation can help us to recognize states of depression and to distinguish them from negative states. Depression is different from being negative. Try to see the truth of this for yourselves. Observe that it is so. This distinction was particularly emphasized in the last paper, and if you have not observed that depression is different from being negative, then you cannot see what is meant. Being depressed often happens to people who like to think that they are always bright, cheerful, and happy. In any case, it is not the same as being negative. Self-observation and memory of one's state of depression are most important, because unless one recognizes depression for what it is, one may make the wrong kind of effort. It is only by understanding such states that one can work on them in the right way. Depression is often a result of illness, or rather, when one is ill, the possibility of being depressed is present. Being ill lowers the vitality. This is not really depression, but is due to the fact that when the instinctive center, which attends to the inner work of the organism and its chemistry, has to meet illness, it borrows from other centers, just as in war, money is taken from all kinds of sources. You have all heard that instinctive center borrows usually from the bank of moving center first, then from the emotional center, and then from the intellectual center. But this is not necessarily itself depression. It is a depressed vitality. And if one is careful to be passive to it and does not identify with it when it begins, if one does not expect anything and is quiet and small in oneself, there need be no depression, i.e. loss of hope and so on, but only a state in which one must not think and has to remain quite still and silent in oneself. There are, of course, rhythmical alterations in the body which lead to depression. One must learn in illness and in such states of altered vitality to see where one is in oneself and what one can do, what is closed and what is open. To expect to be as usual when one is ill will make one depressed. This is wrong attitude. To be internally quiet, to stop imagining, to stop complaining, to relax, to realize one is ill and has little available force is the right approach. Unlike depression, negative emotion is caused always by another person. The other person need not be present. One has something called imagination, which acts instead. Imagination makes us negative. Memory makes us negative, but it is always imagination or memory of a person. When the negative emotion arises from imagination or memory, it is generally a repetition of what one has felt before about the person in question, and after a time it is possible to observe it when it first begins, in which case it can sometimes be separated from before it reaches its full strength. When you are violently negative, as someone said, it is not possible to do much. Why? Because you do not wish to. And most of us like being violently negative at the moment. You must realize that people love being negative, feeling they suffer and so on. That is because that is all that can be said. But you have to see it. A great struggle is needed over a long period to begin to dislike being negative. It is so easy to be negative, that is the trouble. Only you yourself, in your deepest thought and understanding and feeling, can extricate yourself from the pit of negative states by the light of consciousness and aim. One of the most serious negative states can be the result of long-standing self-pity, which especially can lead to the loss of power to make effort. Even the mildest self-pity is negative in color. It may turn into romance with oneself, but it is negative and has the color and taste of negative emotion if one tries to observe it. When my wife and I were in France, G said, "If you will not pity yourself, I will pity you." A dog, when it is washed, pities itself sometimes. What does it do? It takes advantage, jumps on your bed when it knows it must not. There was a dog in France called Cacvas, that is, like yourself. The thing to realize is that everyone tends to pity himself, rich or poor, married or single, successful or a failure. When a man pities himself, he feels he is owed, like the dog. If you feel that you are owed, you will never begin to truly work on yourself. How could you? You must feel you owe. To make the effort to work on yourself, you must actually feel something is wrong with you. It usually takes years and years before a person can even begin to see this with any conviction. The work has to pass through layer after layer of pride, vanity, ignorance, self-complacency, self-indulgence, self-love, self-merit, and so on. Yet it can penetrate eventually. But before it can, the first sign is usually that a person suddenly begins to realize the work is talking about something real and shows some sign of thinking about the ideas. The first change is in the mind, i.e., to think differently. This is metanoia in the Gospels, wrongly translated as repentance. It is called driver awakening in the work. It begins with realizing one's situation. You must understand that this is not very common. People seldom really think of the work from themselves, I mean, as if their life depended on it. This is because they do not very often feel that anything is wrong with them, although they are certain others are wrong. It is like the man who became short-sighted and refused to wear glasses, saying there was nothing wrong with him, but that the trouble was that the recent papers were so badly printed. I'm speaking of a step people must take. As long as one thinks in the same way and feels in the same way, one is mechanical. One is a machine, you know, but one imagines otherwise. Our life is not action as we imagine, but reaction, and we react to things in the same mechanical way over and over again. It is only by seeing one is a machine, first in this small respect, then in that small respect, that one can get the right emotion to help one to change. Fortunately, there is something in us that hates mechanicalness, but this is lulled to sleep by our imagination that we are quite conscious and always act from will and consciousness and one permanent I, and always know what we are doing and saying and thinking, and so on. It is only by conscious effort that one can realize one's mechanicalness, and this effort must be made towards a definite thing, a definite reaction, something practical and clear and distinct. To take it as a theory is worse than useless. When one realizes one is mechanical in some definite respect, it gives a shock. Actually, it is a moment of self-remembering. To work against mechanicalness requires the effort of self-observation. The reason why we react to things in the same mechanical way over and over again is because of the connections and associations in and between our centers. But we are not conscious of this until we observe our centers. In order to change, it is necessary to make centers work in a new way. Let us take an example. Let us suppose you always get upset when you cannot find something. Is this mechanical or not? Yes, it is a mechanical reaction that will regularly recur, unless you put the light of consciousness into it. It is consciousness that changes us. First, the effort of self-observation is needed. Suppose you observe that you react by being negative if you cannot find a thing. This is the first effort, and this belongs to the general effort of self-observation, that is, of becoming more conscious, of noticing oneself and not always taking oneself for granted. Next, observe your thoughts. What thought comes to you always when you have lost something? Then observe the emotion. Notice it, its taste. Then notice your movements, your expression, etc. Next time it will not be so easy to react mechanically when you lose something. What will help you? The work you have done previously on this mechanical reaction, namely the effort to be more conscious. Everything we do consciously remains for us. Everything we do mechanically is lost for us. Or lost to us. Since we are going to speak about the cosmological side of this work, I must say something now in preparation about the relationship of conscious effort or effort in the work to mechanical effort or effort in life. Work is vertical to life. All work effort is to lift a man to a higher level, and a higher level is vertical to him, that is, above him. Let us take this symbol which gives one meaning of the cross. And hello there, Sophia. Happy to have you, and I hope you're well. So here we have a very simple cross. The vertical line is a line representing different levels of being, not only of man, but of the universe itself. A horizontal line drawn at right angles, such as AB, and cutting the vertical line at C, will represent a person's life in time at the level of being represented by the point G. The efforts we make from cause and effect in time, that is, mechanical effort, lie along AB. The vertical line represents a direction of effort different from those made in time. You have heard that higher states of consciousness are timeless, i.e., without any sense of time. Movement on the vertical line is timeless. A higher state of man does not lie along the line AB, but above the man, namely on the vertical line. This line is what gives meaning to all things. It represents the eternal scale of meaning. In approaching the cosmological side of this teaching, we have to understand that it is an essential part of the mental apparatus of this system, and without it the teaching cannot be rightly formed and connected in the different parts of the mind as an instrument for the reception of the influences coming from higher centers. But I intend to give as much help as possible in the form of comments to bring the cosmological side nearer to you so that some of its meaning can begin to influence you. The cosmological side is a very powerful thing, but if no attempt is made to think of it, its force will not affect a person, and so he will not feel the work much beyond his limited self-interests. Now, try to think of this vertical side. We can understand cause and effect in time. In time, cause always comes before effect. But cause is not only in past time. Cause can be above and below us. In illustration, let us take the table of cosmoses from the earth downwards. Cosmos of earth, cosmos of organic life, cosmos of man, cosmos of cells, cosmos of molecules, cosmos of atoms. You see how man is not free, because he is a minute part of the cosmos of organic life, and he is composed of minute parts belonging to the cosmos of cells, which in turn are composed of minute parts, namely molecules and so on. Man is composed of cells which belong to their own cosmos, but man is a part of organic life. If organic life dies, man, who is a part, would die. And if the cosmos below man, the myriads of cells, dies, man would cease to exist. Now, this vertical arrangement is permanent. It is, as it were, vertical cause and effect, or you can call it permanent order, or permanent relationship, or the interfitting of all things. Whether you say order, permanent arrangement, or relationship, etc., does not matter at present. What you have to see is that such a thing as order is not in time, but that time moves through order. Now let me try to show you how vertical cause can be thought of. If you really begin to think of vertical cause, you will see that there are two sorts and two origins of what we call cause. Take, for example, a brick. What is the vertical cause of a brick? Builder, house, brick. Bricks would not be made unless there were the idea of a house. Therefore, in the vertical meaning, the house is the cause of the brick. But in the temporal meaning, horizontal in time, the brick kiln is the cause, so it can be represented thus. Brick kiln, science of brick-making, etc. Then the brick, the house, the builder, and time. And I suppose you could change house for wall or anything that people use bricks to build with. The bricks make the house in time, but the house makes the bricks in the vertical scale of meaning. Man, as was said, stands like this in the center of the cross. He has vertical meaning and temporal meaning. The temporal cause of man is the past in time. The vertical cause is his meaning, and his meaning will be the level of being to which he belongs. So here's a representation of that, past, present, future, and then above and below, and that above and below relates to being, that you can be higher or lower in being. You have heard that your level of being attracts your life. This means that your life will be according to your level of being. Levels of being can be represented as points in the vertical line and form life by the horizontal line. If your level of being changes, the horizontal line will pass to another point in the vertical line. I want you to take hold of the great principle involved in these illustrations, not to compare them, but to see the idea behind them. We will continue this subject next time. And that time is now. A commentary on effort, part 3. The diagram of the cross as given represents a single moment in a man's life. In this single moment, the vertical line is cut across by the horizontal line of time. Here's the same diagram. Every moment of a man's life can be represented in this way. The point of intersection of the vertical with the horizontal line is now. But this point only becomes now in its full meaning if a man is conscious. When a man is identified, there is no now for him. If he is asleep in time, being hurried on from past to future, identified with everything, there is no now in his life. There is not even a present moment. On the contrary, everything is running, everything is changing, everything is turning into something else, and even the moment so looked forward to, so eagerly anticipated when it comes, is already in the past. It is only this feeling of the existence and meaning of the direction represented by the vertical line that gives a man a sense of now. This feeling is sometimes called the feeling of eternity. It is the beginning of the feeling of real I, for real I stands above us, not ahead of us in time. Eternity and time are incommensurable. That means that no quantity of time will make eternity, just as no quantity of length will make breadth. They belong to different dimensions. But eternity and time meet in man at the point called now. In this vertical line there is no past or future. What takes the place of time, of past, present and future, what takes the place of time is state or level or quality. The vertical line represents position, not in time as in, say, the year 1942, or age, such as being aged 20 or 50, but position in the scale of states of being, in the level of understanding and the quality of knowledge. Everything in the universe, visible and invisible, known and unknown, is at some point in this vertical line. Everything is inevitably at some point in this vertical scale, for everything finds its own level in it, according, as it were, to its density, like objects floating in the sea. All evolution, in a real sense, is to pass from one point to a higher point in this scale. Scale means ladder. In all the diagrams we are going to study, this idea of the universe as a ladder or scale is found, and that is why it is so necessary to gain some preliminary conception of the significance of this vertical direction that does not lie ahead of us in the future of time, in next year or the next century, that does not lie either in space or in time, but lies in another dimension, namely above us. In a limited way, we all know the existence of this vertical line, for we all know better and worse states of ourselves. This is particularly the case once a man has begun to work on himself, and to know what it means to separate from bad states, and what it means to be asleep. Now, there are two kinds of influences that can reach us at any particular moment. One comes from the horizontal line, the line representing time. These are the influences of the past that enter at every moment into our lives, and also the influences coming from the future, that is, the future represented in the line of time we are moving along. But there are also other influences. When a man remembers himself, he lifts himself in the vertical line upwards and tastes for a moment a new state. This happens when a man no longer merely thinks about self-remembering, but actually does it. when he no longer tries to escape from negative states by thinking himself out of them, but stops all his thoughts and lifts himself up into self-remembering. And it is only by this inner movement that new influences can reach him. As you know, it has been repeatedly said that help can only reach a man if he remembers himself, i.e., it can only reach the third state of consciousness. In most of the ancient, medieval and later books, such as those of the 17th century, which contain traces of esoteric ideas, that is, that contain B influences, you will find this vertical direction represented. In the Old Testament, in the first few books, or the Pentateuch, as it is called, where all the stories are allegorical and contain a hidden meaning, we find the example of Jacob's ladder. This represents the universe seen in its vertical height and depth as above and below. Jacob represents man asleep at the bottom of the possible scale of development existing in him. It is related in Genesis that Jacob lay down in a certain place to sleep, and he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Let us take a similar example from this system. You know that man in this system is taken in scale. There are different kinds of men, different in scale or level. And so here, let's start from the bottom. Man, as you know, man number 1, number 2, and number 3, correlating to the different centers active, the primary centers in each of those individuals, is mechanical man, man asleep. Man number 4 is balanced man or awaking, and man number 5, 6, and 7 is conscious man, man awake. Man is born as a self-evolving organism. He can rise from one level to another in this vertical scale, and that is why there is such a thing as esoteric teaching. All the knowledge belonging to this system is about the possibility of man's undergoing an inner transformation and rising in the scale of being. In the Christian and Mohammedan religions, for example, this is called union with God. To pass from one point in the vertical line to a higher point, a thing must be transformed, become different from what it was at a lower level. From the standpoint of this teaching, man is not a fixed point in the universe seen in this vertical manner, as in an animal which cannot change and is born what it is and what it must remain. Man is capable of inner change. He is an experiment, but he is of no importance in the total universe unless he begins to fulfill the experiment that he represents. Perhaps you will see what is meant when I say that unless the universe were invisibly a vertical scale of ascending and descending values, there would be no meaning in it. The universe is a series of stages, of levels, of degrees, extending vertically from the highest to the lowest, and everything is at a certain point in the universe. The chair you are sitting on is at a different point in the universe from yourself. Yet if you take the universe as space existing only in the 3 dimensions of space, you might think that you and the chair were at the same point in the universe. Man, as a child of the universe, as a product of it, bears in himself the stamp of the universe. That is to say, man has scale in him. Commentary on Effort, Part 4. And here we have this same graphic again, the line of time, past, present and future, and the line of being, the vertical line above and below. 3 notes. 1. Work aim has to do with the vertical line. Life aim has to do with the horizontal line. A man can reach his life aim. When he does so, he usually is at a loss and does not know what to do. The supreme formulation of work aim is found in the Gospels, where it is said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you," from Matthew 6. The kingdom of heaven is above a man, not in the future of time, but now. It is the state of man, reached internally, and so is said to be within you. All the teaching in the Gospels is about the kingdom of heaven, that is, aim is to ascend the vertical line. Here lies the possibility of a man's becoming a conscious man, and this is his hidden meaning, i.e., man can rise in the vertical scale. He is where he is in the vertical line and so has one life, but he can change his position in the universe. Life does not contain inexhaustible meaning, but the vertical line represents inexhaustible meaning, hence vertical aim can never be fulfilled as life aim may be. 2. The vertical line represents the line of transformation, and this line cuts at right angles the horizontal line of time, which is the line of change. This requires to be explained. The line of transformation is at right angles to the line of change. You are all aware that time is change. Nothing in time remains the same. Even the mountains are changing. But this change that belongs to time is not transformation. The passage of time does not transform a thing, it changes it, alters it, makes it, for example, decay or wear out. All things get older in time, but this is not transformation. Transformation does not lie along the horizontal line, but is a necessity in the vertical line. In this work, the term change of being ultimately means transformation of being, but many changes must take place in time before any degree of transformation can occur. The inner arrangement of a man must change, i.e., the lower centers in a man must be prepared by work before the transforming influences from higher centers can begin to reach him. The forces of transformation act from the vertical line. They act upon substances lying in the horizontal line in time. If these substances are in a fit state, that is, if their qualities and quantities are arranged and arrangement are right, transformation will result. Let us find an example. You know that in the cosmos below man, the world of living cells, certain of these cells are incomplete in their inner structure because they are capable of developing into human beings. This is transformation. Strictly speaking, transformation is the real meaning of evolution. These cells have, by union, the necessary substances and, under certain conditions, undergo transformation. Through the union of these cells, a human being results. But this takes a certain time as well, first in the internal arrangement of the minute world of the two cells after union, where certain substances are selected and others are actually expelled from the united cells, and then in regard to their division and multiplication and miraculous ordering subsequently. But all these changes in time are controlled by the vertically acting forces of transformation, and the result is a passage of a living thing from one cosmos to another cosmos, from the cell cosmos to the cosmos of man. And as you know, similar and even more extraordinary transformation occurs in the insect world, where it would seem many experiments in transformation have been made. But a human being, a man, is again incomplete and so feels the desire for union. Those cells in him which are incomplete communicate their desire for completeness, and this forms one desire for union. But a man is not merely the reflection of the cell cosmos. He feels incomplete in other ways if he possesses magnetic center. Now you will understand that in this vertical line, if we could move a thing upwards, it would at once become transformed. Whereas if we could move a thing in time, it would merely change, get younger or older, according to the direction in which we moved it. 3. In this horizontal line representing our lives, we live and move. But where this horizontal line cuts the vertical line marks the point of our level of being, and what we experience in time is the result of our level of being. Being is vertical to time and is a man's stature. There is an interesting phrase used in the Acts about this idea. Paul says that God is not far from each one of us, for, he says, in him we live and move and have our being. We live and move in time, but we have our being in this vertical line which descends from the highest to the lowest. But ordinarily we think that our origin lies in the horizontal line in time, namely the past, and we do not understand that our origin is also vertical to this line. You have heard the expression that essence comes from the stars, and when we come to talk about the ray of creation, you will see plainly that the stars signify an order of worlds far above the earth in vertical scale. That is to say, essence in its origin, and you must remember that at birth we are essence, lies above us. The point where it enters into time is the moment of our birth. The point where it leaves time is the moment of our death. In between these two points lies our life in time, where a development of essence is possible and where apart from this personality is formed inevitably. That is, personality is formed in time and belongs to time, whereas essence enters time and leaves time. Essence is beyond time. The quality of essence belongs to the vertical line drawn at right angles to time, that is to say, essential being belongs here. Speaking in general, a man's being is made up of everything in him, but a man's essential being depends on the development of his essence, what is real in him. This is what he is. In the phrase quoted above from the Acts, when it is said, "In him we have our being," the Greek, again, esmen, maybe that is. I'm not up on my Greek at the moment, but you can see the Greek term there. Means we are, i.e., in him we are. Being is what we are, and as I said last time, the vertical line represents where a thing is in the total universe of meaning. A thing is where it is essentially. Being is from the verb to be, which signifies being. It is what you are. God is defined in the Old Testament as I am that I am. When Moses asks the name of God, the reply was, I am that I am. In life, we try to be like something. We're always trying to be like something, always trying to imitate, always pretending to be something we are not. If a man were to find real I in himself, which lies vertically above him in the scale of being, he would no longer be like anything, but would be himself, what he is. In this vertical scale, the being of everything lies, the being of a stone, the being of a tree, the being of a dog, the being of organic life, the being of the earth, the being of the sun, the being of the starry galaxy. This is nothing to do with time. But to each level of being there is a scale in time allotted, for the perfection of being lies in time. We have our allotted span of life in time appropriate to changing our being, for, as you know, from the standpoint of this work, the whole universe on every scale and in every degree is evolving. This work does not teach that we live in a dying universe, but in an evolving one, and everything in it, in every different world or cosmos, is seeking its evolution. That is to say, it is seeking to rise higher and higher in the level of being. And in every cosmos something is working. We know directly that in the cosmos of man to which we belong, in this cosmos something is working. This work itself is a sign of it. The whole idea of esotericism is a sign of it. You are taught that man is a self-evolving organism, that there is and always has been a special kind of teaching that deals with this inner evolution, and you are taught that there are conscious men who have attained this possible inner evolution. Now let us turn to the cosmos of cells which is below man in order to see whether there is anything similar here. 3 kinds of cells with very distinct differences exist in man: brain cells, sex cells, and body cells. namely the cells composing the organs, the skin, the muscles, which are all different but in a sense similar. 1. Brain cells are shut off from the body in a special way with bony coverings, skull and vertebrae. They are cushioned by water jackets from shock. They are completely isolated from the bodily organs. They get the best nourishment and, in starvation, show the least changes. Brain cells live for the period of man, i.e., they are immortal in respect to the ordinary period of cell life, which is very roughly in the order of 24 hours. That is, they live 80 years of man's time, which is 2,400,000 years of their own time. They can be compared with the circle of conscious humanity with those who have reached immortality. 2. Sex cells are incomplete internally in a certain way, and they have a destiny quite different from that of the body cells. 3. Body cells, the cells composing the liver, the stomach, etc., are constantly dividing in periods shorter and longer than 24 hours, maybe months, yet of that order of period of time. These cells can be compared with mechanical humanity, which is under certain laws and must submit to them in one way or another. We can arrange these cells in vertical order: brain cells, sex cells, body cells. Just as we arranged man in vertical order, conscious man, balanced man, and mechanical man, at present I only wish to draw attention to this correspondence between the cosmos of man and the cosmos of cells. We will speak of the cosmos of atoms and special kinds of atoms later. What I wish to indicate is that something is working in each cosmos, or if you prefer, that what exists in the cosmos of man must in some corresponding way exist in the cosmoses below him, for every cosmos is under the same laws. And that was another very interesting and insightful series of letters from Maurice Nicoll. Again, so much in there to take inspiration from, I suppose, and motivation, because ultimately what he's saying there, if I can just summarize, if you like, is that work on being, consciousness, waking up, it doesn't exist in the future. As he says there, he shared several times, didn't he, the diagram of the lines of time, past and future. This work, the Gurdjieff Fourth Way, it doesn't exist on that line. As you saw, it exists on the vertical line of above and below. And essentially, to summarize it very simply, any moment that we become conscious, we become aware, we are moving up that line, up and down, When we fall asleep, we move down it, of course. When we wake up, we move up it, and it's fluctuating until one crystallizes, Gurdjieff would say. One would have to crystallize one state, and that, of course, takes time and effort. But the fact is that this fallacy that something will come in a number of days or weeks, or I'll be happy in 2 weeks when I've moved house, or I'll be happy in 2 years when I retire from my job, or I'll be happy in 6 months when I'm on holiday in the Caribbean. It doesn't exist, it's a fallacy. It's not true. The only time is now, that point in the middle of the cross where above, below, past and future all intersect the present moment. And as he said several times, if one's asleep, if one's unconscious, if one's identified, then you're not even existing. There is no present moment. There is no now for you if you are asleep, if you are unconscious. And so, as always, there's much to review, much to re-listen to and go over, because it's a little bit intense to take all of that in. Although maybe your soul, your subconscious has absorbed it all, your conscious mind will take some time to process it, and by reviewing it, going back to your favorite passages, the ones that jumped out most to you, will of course help with that understanding. And as Maurice Nicoll also says, this work is understanding, knowledge and being. You have to take in the ideas first, experience them in real life and verify them, and that brings understanding. And that all goes into being and essence and all of these other words that we know from all of these texts. And I must say, I am very much enjoying working through the psychological commentaries with you. I will continue to upload the readings from In Search of the Miraculous and then move on to the Fourth Way. And so all of that going with the life of the channel. Those two texts from Ouspensky, Maurice Nicoll's commentaries, and my own commentary on the Four Ideals, hopefully will bring some rich religious and philosophical thought, so that as we discussed in a Discord group, we can awaken the higher centers, which ultimately will mean moving upwards on that vertical plane of existence. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I did. Thanks for joining and being here and keeping company. Do comment any questions or observations that you might have. I do always enjoy hearing and reading them. But for now, I'll say take care, and we will likely be back later in the week for another reading on the Law of Three, if all things go well. So, take care, my friends, and I will see you very soon. Bye now.